Awareness: Exploring, Experimenting, Experiencing by John O. Stevens. Demand and response: Top dog, underdog. An awareness exercise. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Now imagine that you are looking at yourself sitting in front of you. Form some kind of visual image of yourself sitting there in front of you, perhaps as if reflected in a mirror. How is this image sitting? What is this image of yourself wearing? What kind of facial expression do you see? Now silently criticize this image of yourself as if you were talking to another person. If you are doing this experiment alone, talk out loud. Tell yourself what you should and shouldn't do. Begin each sentence with the words you should, you shouldn't, or their equivalent. Make a long list of criticisms. Listen to your voice as you do this. How does your voice sound? How do you feel physically as you do this? Now imagine that you change places with this image. Become this image of yourself and silently answer these criticisms. What do you say in response to these critical comments? And what does your tone of voice express? How do you feel as you respond to these criticisms? Now switch roles and become the critic again. As you continue this internal dialogue, be aware of what you say and also how you say it, your words, your tone of voice, and so on. Pause occasionally to just listen to your own words in your mind and experience them. Switch roles whenever you want to, but keep the dialogue going. Notice all the details of what is going on in you as you do this. Notice how you feel physically in each role. How do these two speakers differ? Do you really talk to each other? Or do you avoid real contact or confrontation? Are you listening to each other as well as talking? Or are you only broadcasting and not receiving? How do you feel about this other speaker as you talk? Tell this to the other speaker and see what he or she responds. Do you recognize anyone you know in the voice that criticizes you and says, you should? What else are you aware of in this interaction? Bring this awareness into the conversation between you. Continue this silent dialogue for a few minutes longer. Do you notice any changes as you continue the dialogue? Now just sit quietly and review this dialogue. As you look back, is there anything else about this conversation that you notice? In a minute, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and come back to the group. I want each person in turn to share your experiences with the group in as much detail as possible. I want you each to express what happened in your dialogue in first person present tense, as if it were happening now. As the critical person, I feel strong, and I say, you shouldn't goof off so much. You ought to work harder, or whatever your experience is. Open your eyes now and do this. Probably you experienced some kind of split or conflict, some division between a powerful, critical, authoritative part of you that demands that you change, and another less powerful part of you that apologizes, evades, and makes excuses. It is as though you are divided into a parent and child, the parent, or top dog, always trying to get control to change you into something better, and the child, or underdog, continually evading these attempts to change. As you listen to the voice that criticized and made demands on you, you may have recognized that it sounded a lot like one of your parents, or it might have sounded like someone else in your life who makes demands on you, your husband or wife, a boss, or some other authority who controls you. If you do recognize someone specific in this dialogue, it is valuable to continue the dialogue as if you are speaking directly to this person. At the same time, I want you to realize that everything you experience in this dialogue happens in your head, your own head. Whether your dialogue is with another specific person or with society, it occurs in your own world of fantasy. When the other speaks in this dialogue, it is not society or an actual person who speaks, but your image of this other. Whatever occurs in your fantasy dialogue goes on between different parts of yourself. If there is conflict in your dialogue, this conflict is between two parts of yourself, even if you alienate and disown one part and call it society, mother, father, etc. We usually assume that our problems and conflicts are with other people, so we struggle to be free of their demands and don't realize how much of the conflict is actually within us. Khalil Gibran expresses this beautifully in The Prophet. And an orator said, "Speak to us of freedom." And he answered, "At the city gate and by your fireside, I have seen you prostrate yourself and worship your own freedom. Even as slaves humble themselves before a tyrant and praise him though he slays them. I, in the grove of the temple and in the shadow of the citadel, I have seen the freest among you wear their freedom as a yoke and a handcuff, and my heart bled within me. For you can only be free when even the desire of seeking freedom becomes a harness to you, and when you cease to speak of freedom as a goal and a fulfillment. You shall be free indeed when your days are not without a care, nor your nights without a want and a grief, but rather when these things girdle your life, and yet you rise above them naked and unbound. And how shall you rise beyond your days and nights, unless you break the chains which you at the dawn of your understanding, have fastened around your night, your noon hour? In truth, that which you call freedom is the strongest of these chains, though its links glitter in the sun and dazzle your eyes. And what is it but fragments of your own self you would discard that you may become free? If it is an unjust law that you would abolish, that law was written with your own hand upon your own forehead. You cannot erase it by burning your law books, nor by washing the foreheads of your judges, though you pour the sea upon them. And if it is a despot you would dethrone, see first that his throne erected within you is destroyed. For how can a tyrant rule the free and the proud, but for a tyranny in their own freedom and a shame in their own pride? And if it is a care you would cast off, that care has been chosen by you rather than imposed upon you. And if it is a fear you would dispel, the seat of that fear is in your heart and not in the hand of the feared. Verily, all things move within your being in constant half embrace, the desired and the dreaded, the repugnant and the cherished, the pursued and that which you would escape. These things move within you as lights and shadows, in pairs that cling, and when the shadow fades, there is no more. The light that lingers becomes a shadow to another light, and thus your freedom, when it loses its fetters, becomes itself the fetter of a greater freedom. There are real problems in the world, and I can deal with these problems only when I am clear in myself about how I feel and what I want to do. When I am in conflict, I identify partly with my own feelings and wants, and partly with fantasies that conflict this awareness. Ideas about what I should be, catastrophic expectations, fears of what others will do, etc. Much of my communication activities are directed toward myself instead of toward the world. To the extent that I do this, I become ingrown, autistic, and isolated from others. My energy becomes divided and in opposition, so that very little energy is available for my struggles and with the real world. When I participate in outside conflicts before I have cleared up the conflicts within me, I just created more conflict both inside and outside. As long as I believe that my conflict is only with someone or something outside myself, I can do very little except complain about it or try to change or destroy it. When I realize that much of the conflict is within me, then I can do something much more productive. I can take responsibility for my own difficulties and stop blaming the world for the problems that are my own. I can seek to discover more about these different and conflicting parts of myself, identify with them, and learn from them. The first step in this process is to become aware of the autistic activity that goes on in my mind or fantasy life. The next step is to direct it outward so that the autistic self-to-self activity becomes relational self-to-other activity. As I direct this activity outward toward the world, it becomes more explicit and more detailed. Often I can discover who these messages are really intended for or where they come from.